What is going on, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome back to a brand new video. Before we dive into the subject of today's video, I wanted to briefly talk about a few details regarding how I plan on posting content going forward. As many of you may or may not know, I've never really stuck to a proper upload schedule on this channel, and I did that for many reasons, one mainly being to avoid burnout. And while I still don't want to hold myself to any sort of upload schedule here on YouTube, I am going to aim to upload at least one video per week while I sort of ease back into the swing of things here on YouTube. I really want things to feel new and fresh on this channel, not only for me, but for all of you watching as well. And in order for me to properly do that, I feel as though I need to take my time and change fundamentally how I go about making and posting my content. And that starts really from the bottom up. I know this might not be the most interesting way to start the video, but I feel like I owe you guys a little bit of an explanation as to how things are going to work post my year-long break. Now, with all that out of the way, we can actually hop into the subject of today's video, which is basically meant to be a follow-up to the last video that I posted. And by the way, if you have not seen that video, I would highly recommend it. It's probably one of my favorite videos that I've ever made, and I highly recommend you guys check it out if you haven't seen it. It kind of will make this video make a little bit more sense. It kind of builds off that video. So if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link to it up in the top right. And of course, this goes without saying, but I owe everybody a massive thank you for checking that video out. I cannot believe the overwhelming positive response that video received. It feels great to see it get so much love and support after spending so much time and putting so much effort into it. So I owe everybody a massive thank you from the bottom of my heart for checking that video out, liking it, leaving a comment, sharing it, watching it, whatever. I really do thank you guys for that. So just want to say again, big thank you for all the love and support on my first real video back in nearly a year. So as I said, this video is mainly meant to be a brief follow-up talking about my Speedroid build here for March of 2025. In just a moment, I'm going to be sharing with you guys 3 replays that I've got from my time spent playing on the YGO Omega ladder. I think my rating is in Platinum for those that are curious, and I'm going to be showing you guys those replays from start to finish so you can see firsthand how the deck performs as a whole. I know in the last video I only showed brief snippets and sort of highlights and lowlights, but in this video, I want to actually show you guys everything from start to finish, because I know that's something that some people probably still want to see, are full-length matches, and that is what I want to provide here in this video. Then after that, I will be discussing and addressing any mistakes that I made in those matches, and then to follow all of that up, I'll be showing you guys the updated deck profile for Speedroid and basically addressing the changes that I made, why I made them, if those changes worked out as I expected they would, and if I would keep those changes moving forward. Now, I know another question you guys probably have as well is, you said Mermail was going to be your next deck. What gives? Why aren't you playing Mermail in this video? Now, don't get me wrong, I am playing Mermail, and I have been playing Mermail. In fact, I have taken this deck to 2 locals already, but the Mermail video, the Return to Mermail video, is still a ways away from being completed. That video will be much similar to my last one about Speedroid, and it's going to take some time. So in the interim, I want to post some other types of content to keep you guys entertained and also to help me sort of flex my creative muscles here on YouTube when it comes to making content. So with all that out of the way, I'm going to show a little bit more love to one of my favorite decks of all time, and I hope you guys enjoy. Hopping into our first replay here, we are going up against the Nouvelles deck. I know this isn't a very meta-relevant matchup, but I kind of wanted to start with a more non-meta-relevant deck since we are also playing a very rogue deck, and then kind of work our way up the ladder as the video progresses. So my opening hand here in game 1 was Fua, Wheel, Duke, Ash, and Marble Machine. Very, very solid hand for going first and for going second. Great starter extender combo, and of course 2 going second cards. And I'm going to lead with the Wheel here, discarding the Duke, and I end up rolling a 6, which is absolutely phenomenal. Getting out Car Turbo and Tekatomborg. Going to go ahead and normal summon that Marble Machine. and I'm going to go ahead and synchro right into Hagoida. Duke's going to bring back the car and establish that early Crystal Wing so we can try to beat Nibiru here, or any other hand trap for that matter. We're going to go ahead and manipulate Terror Top into a level 2, go into Cork Shooter, bring back the materials, make Cork Shooter a level 5. So when we do eventually resolve our Wing Synchron, we can go for OSD without using 2 tuners, since we have a tuner synchro, and we also don't need to waste our Clear Wing glider, or our glider number 2, and save that in the extra deck for sort of follow-up. I'm going to go ahead and bring back the Hagoida here, since we've got that level 2 tuner clackers, and go for another level 7 synchro play in of the Clearwing Synchro Dragon. Now, my opponent does slap me with Dark Ruler, which I honestly was not expecting. Dark Ruler is not really a card people are maining right now in this particular meta. Be hard pressed to find it in a lot of decks, a lot of side decks, so that definitely threw me off guard, and I'm just kind of sitting here hoping my 1 Ash is going to be enough to slow him down, and just hope he doesn't clear the overall board. But if he does, at least we're going to get something out of OSD and, you know, floating into another Clearwing monster. And to be totally honest, I literally have never played against this deck before. I think maybe I played against it once at a locals like a year and a half, maybe almost, yeah, I want to say a year and a half ago, and I couldn't tell you anything from that match. And I think I was playing Photon Galaxy, but that's neither here nor there. They're going to go ahead and combo off here. I'm just going to pause the replay into these 2 ritual monsters. I'm not even going to try to pronounce their names. The only thing that's important there we need to pay attention to is the effects. It says quick effect, you contribute 1 Nouvelles monster you control and 1 attack position monster on either field. And if you do, special summon 1 level 4 or 5 Nouvelles ritual monster from your hand or deck. So that effect's broken, right? Distributing something off either side of the field and be able to extend with that. So I decided to go ahead and use my Ash there on that effect to spare one of my monsters from being tributed, and he's also going to crash into the Rubber Band Shooter and run it over with his other ritual. And he's going to go ahead and resolve the field spell and just pass turn here. So right now I think I'm absolutely in the driver's seat. We're going to go ahead and use that Duplicate Engrave. Hadn't used it last turn. Go into that second Cork Shooter, which we'll talk more about later, and Synchro Climb into Crystal Clearwing to try to defend against that back row. He's going to try to use that ritual effect to tribute and summon. I try to negate, but he's got the counter trap, which obviously the Crystal Clear is not going to be able to respond to. And then he brings out this guy. Here again, quick effect, target 1 attack which monster opponent controls, tribute it, and if you do, special summon 1 Hungry Burger monster, Hungry Burger from your hand or deck. And he's just resolving all of these tribute effects to summon, and my board really just cannot deal with it. You see I'm tagging out into Clearing Fast. I'm resolving my effect to search off of Crystal Clear, and it's really just not enough there at the end of the day. I probably could have maybe tried to play into that a little bit, but I really just have no gas left in the tank, if I'm being totally honest. And I want to just check something Engrave here. I think I already normal summoned. Yeah, I think I already normal summoned, but if I didn't, I could technically normal summon the Duke and bring back the dice, make Glider, and go and do an OSD. But I'm in a very, very losing position at that point because my opponent does have 6 cards in hand. So that was just a bit of a train wreck all around. I'm going to be totally honest. I have very little experience against this deck, and my deck interacted very poorly with the few cards that he was able to establish. So let's look at game 2. Game 2 is going to go ahead and play out a lot different than the first, although I am still going to go first, despite knowing my opponent is maining things like Dark Ruler. I'm in a very weak hand here. Normal summon the Duke Spec card, turbo go right into Rubber Band Shooter, and that's going to get hit with a hand trap and just basically end my turn. But I do have Droll, I do have Valor, I do have Dominus Purge, so I'm feeling confident I can stop his engine before it gets rolling. I do Droll on Resolution there. I have Dominus Purge for the Triple Tactics Thrust, and we top deck a Crossout Designator, which is really good to stop any opposing hand traps as I try to get my engine rolling. They do have Droll, but I do have Crossout. We're going to shut that down. Normal summon that Terror Top we got off of the Rubber Band Shooter. That's going to grab Marble Machine for that extra body. I like going for Marble Machine in situations like this whenever I can, because establishing that level 2 to bring out with your level 3 tuners to get into Hagoita or your glider is just very beneficial. He decides to pop the car turbo here with Final Bringer of the End Times. I've literally never seen this card before in my entire life, but he's going to remove that tuner off the field, which fair enough. You know, he doesn't probably know too much about my deck. If anything, he's probably thinking, I just want to keep any tuners he has off the field to prevent a synchro play, and that's just kind of correct thinking if I'm being honest. But I am able to resolve Chrono Clackers here and Wing Synchron and going for the glider. I use Car Turbo to make everything gain 800, and then in the damage step, Clackers effect in the face-up extra deck to make my clearing monster gain 700 permanently, and we just swing in for a game there. So much different result there in game 2 than we saw in game 1, thankfully. And now let's look at game 3. And in game 3, I thought I was going to be going second, but my opponent does make me go first, which I was not expecting. And it felt really bad because I think I had sided out my crossouts because I thought I was going to be going second. So definitely felt a little vulnerable here knowing that crossout wasn't in my deck and that I might have to face a barrage of hand traps. My opponent does have Droll and Lockbird, but I got super lucky with hard drawing a lot of extenders that I would have needed to search in order to play, but of course they're already in my hand, and I'm able to resolve Clackers into Wing Synchron to get us into an OSD with clearing Fast Dragon. Droll isn't always going to be the end of the world. You just gotta hope you can open things like Double Yo-Yo and your Colonel Clackers. I don't know why I made Fast Dragon. I don't think I've seen him go into the extra deck once this match, so I probably should have just made regular Clearwing Synchro Dragon. It's kind of a bit of a misplay there, but you know, hindsight is 2020. And I think next time, if I play against this deck, next time, hopefully I don't, you know, I know to not make Fast Dragon in this scenario. So, gonna go ahead and start my turn off here as my opponent luckily doesn't have much of an engine on his turn, doesn't have many plays. He does Ash the Rubber Band Shooter, that's fine. I do negate the Final Bringer of End Times, and I just go into battle phase here, plain and simple, no shenanigans, and I go ahead and Ash the effect of his Beryl Baez de Nouvelles. I probably butchered that, but yeah, prevent him from tributing one of my monsters and then specking out, I believe, is it from the hand or deck? Use special level to virtual monster in your hand or deck, yeah. So Ash that, shut it down, and we secure the dub there in game 3. A very interesting matchup, albeit a tricky one at that. Now let's take a look at our next replay. Hopping into our second match, we are going to be playing against the Kashtira deck, and our opening hand is Marble Machine, Call by the Grave, Wheel, Small World, and Effect Veiler. So we have many ways to play. We can play through a hand trap, and we at least have one, technically 2 going second cards depending on what we're playing against, but not a bad hand overall. Let's see how we play this one out. I believe I start by activating the Small World, and we're going to go ahead and grab Terror Top here. And I just go through Nib to get to the Terror Top because obviously Veiler and Nib are both light monsters, and Nib and Terror Top both have 600 defense, so a very, very nice bridge there. And I'm comfortable with leading with Small World because I have Call by the Grave, Spec Terror Top, grab Tekatomborg. Tekatomborg is going to go ahead and summon itself here, tagging out for Red-Eye Dice. Red-Eye Dice will make top a level 2, and we're going to synchro into the Cork Shooter. Cork Shooter will revive the 2 materials. Dice will make Terror Top a level 4, synchroing into Hagoita, where our opponent then has a Nibiru. This is pretty much a very easy way to tell if your opponent has Nibiru or not. If your opponent knows that Crystal Wing exists, which I would say most competitive players know what Crystal Wing is, and that single base decks can access it easily to beat cards like Nibiru. If they have it, they should and will drop it right there before you obviously synchro into the card. And if they don't have any response there, it's probably a pretty good sign that you don't have to go into Crystal Wing, although you probably still should. But if you have other plays that could benefit from maybe not synchro into Crystal Wing and you want to do something a little bit different, and you get to that point and they don't have Nib, odds are you're probably safe, but you should still just synchro for Crystal Wing regardless. So Nib will get summoned. We special out the token. I'm going to normal summon here Marble Machine, and I gotta say, that feels so good. Just like putting all that pressure on the opponent, getting into Crystal Wing without even having to burn a normal summon. It's really, really awesome. But now we can normal summon Marble Machine, grab the Colonel Clackers. Clackers will scale up Wing Synchron, banish attack a Tomborg, and use Wing Synchron here to go ahead and bring out the Clearing Synchro Dragon. Clackers will summon another copy of Clackers, and then we're going to link into the High Speedroid Rubber Band Shooter with the Clearing and the Clackers, and we're going to banish a 6, revealing both Hound and Duke. We get Duke in this case. If we get Hound, same outcome. And if you're not playing Hound, you can just reveal Card Turbo. The combo works pretty much exactly the same. The only benefit here is obviously we have that follow-up engrave, and especially if we have a Goita, right, we have technically a Crystal Wing play in our back pocket going into the next turn. Or if you're going second and you've sided in Kite Drake, or you main Kite Drake, right, you have a Kite Drake set up for next turn as your first action, and that's always a pretty strong thing to have. But I'm just going to go ahead and additional normal the Duke. Now we're going to bring back the Hagoita while we have Duke on field, and then we're going to go ahead and synchro into Glider with the Duke and the Marble. Glider is going to go ahead and bring back the Clear Wing, and then we're going to go ahead and synchro for OSD, and then we're going to use Duke Engrave to bring back the Cork Shooter and still establish our Crystal Wing. So through Nibiru, we are still able to end on OSD and Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon with a called by set. And we do have a decent amount of follow-up engrave. We also have an interruption engrave in the form of High Speedroid Glider number 2. So pretty decent, right? Pretty good. We have Wheel in hand sort of as a backup play, although now you could argue Wheel is a little less good. Sometimes like Wheel just doesn't fit with certain hands, and it can kind of be awkward sitting there, but I'd still rather have it in the deck than not. You know, I'll take situations like this and try to deal less with those hands where I have absolutely no plays. And sometimes it is a pivotal extender when you need it to be. So we're going to pass it over to my opponent, and they're probably pretty impressed with my ability to pilot the Speedroid deck, but they do have Terraforming. That's going to add them Wraithoth, and they're going to activate Metal Tronus. I think this is the first time I've actually been Metal Tronus. It's a very interesting card. Target one face-up non-token monster your opponent controls, especially when one monster from your hand, deck, or extra deck that has 2 or more of the same type attribute and or attack, but negate its effects, and you negate that target of monster's effects. Also, after that, if these monsters have the same name, you can banish both face down. Your opponent cannot activate the target of monster's effect in response to this card's activation. So a lot of text on that card. Pretty insane card. And of course, they're obviously not going to be playing OSD in their deck, so they're going to have to bring out Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit. They're both level 12, both 3,500 attack. So OSD is effectively turned off for now. Was not expecting that, but pretty good card here to have. And they're going to go ahead and link into SP Little Knight. Pretty solid 1-2 combo there for them. Nib with their Metal Tronus target. They get that effect of SP Little Knight on summon. They're going to go ahead and banish OSD. They're going to chain SP Little Knight's effect in response. And I just let that resolve, I believe. Yeah, I guess I just let that go ahead and resolve. I'm not sure why I did let that resolve. Either way, the OSD is going to tag into the Crystal Clearwing Synchro Dragon. I felt as that was the best option to go into. They're going to spec Unicorn. Unicorn will add a copy of the Osis. They're going to activate the spell. Going to go ahead and grab the level 4 cash. I'm forgetting his name. Riseheart. That's it. And on the summon of Riseheart, I'm going to go ahead and use Glider Engrave to make everything gain 5 levels. They're going to activate Unicorn in response. I will then chain the Crystal Clearwing to gain the attack, boosting it up to 5,500. They'll use the effect of Riseheart, making it a 7 again, but it's not going to matter so much because that Kashtira Unicorn is already a 12. They're going to activate the Theosis, and the Crystal Clearwing is going to negate it. They're going to make Typhon, and then they're just going to go ahead and admit defeat there. I think they realized that they could not bounce the Crystal Clearwing with the Typhon because it is unaffected by monster effects. Let's hop into game 2 now. My opening hand is Imperm, Marble Machine, Nib, Purge, and Droll and Lockbird. Pretty solid hand for going second. 4 going second cards plus a starter. Pretty crazy. I will admit they activate Sacred Sword of 7 stars, and I go ahead and purge that. Could I have let that resolve, then Droll them on resolution? Yes, I absolutely could have. But then they're going to have Wraithoth here. That's going to get them Unicorn. Yeah, if I'm being honest, that was probably a mistake. Should have just let the Droll rock first. They special summon Unicorn, set 2, and pass. We draw a copy of Red-Eyed Dice Return. Not the greatest card to draw here. Honestly, probably one of the worst cards to draw here. They're going to use Prep to bring back Ogre. And I could have used Imperm here on one of the two cash monsters, but I guess I felt as though it wasn't a big, like, necessity at this point. Sure, I'll lose a card from the extra deck, but all the cards I really care about in my extra deck, I'm at least playing 2 copies of right now, and the Ogre is kind of whatever, so I feel like I just want to hold that Imperm for the following turn. They're going to use Unicorn, and they're going to use Ogre, very slowly revealing the top 5 cards of the deck and banishing one, and they banish Takatamborg, they banish Glider. It's whatever, we can play without Glider, don't need it. And we're going to go in Hagoita. Duke is going to bring out the Dice. Dice will target Hagoita, make it a level 2. Go for Cork Shooter, and they have Solemn Judgment. I was not expecting the Solemn Judgment there. It's a huge Solemn Judgment. That would have been a massive play to pop off with. And they're going to start with Unicorn. I'm glad I saved that Imperm there. Keep them off a Kashtira spell. Honestly, probably kept me from losing the game. And they're going to go ahead and rip that Nibiru out of our hand. And the replay is nice and bugged out right now. There we go. And they're going to banish one off the top and swing in for a bunch of damage. And we top deck a Colonel Clackers, which is a very, very good top deck here. We're going to banish Tekatomorg, scale up the Wing Synchron effect, bring out Clear Wing, and Clackers effect to go ahead and summon another copy of itself. They use both effects here again, no surprise, but we can at least negate the Ogre with Clearwing Single Dragon because it's absolutely a menace against cash decks. Any deck that uses level 5 or higher frequently. And then because we have a tuner on field, we're going to be able to bring out the Goita here. And yeah, they banished OSD off of the Unicorn, so not a problem at all. We don't need that card, especially when the game state is this simplified. And we're going to go right into the battle phase and boost up our already boosted Clearwing with Colonel Clackers to go over top that Unicorn for huge damage and swing in for a game there with Hagoita. But overall, pretty solid matchup. But let's go ahead and take a look at our most competitive matchup in the third and final replay. So my opening hand here in game 1 is Marble Machine, Fua, Car Turbo, Terror Top, and Scratch. I did lose die roll here, and I lead with Fua in the standby phase, but unfortunately for me, fortunate for them, they do have the Ash Blossom. They're going to resolve Bonfire and grab Ice Riz, and that's going to bring out Sword, and Sword effect is going to go ahead and search the Ext, and it's pretty much just full Ryzeal combo. I thought this was Fiendsmith Ryzeal originally, but it actually is just pure Ryzeal. I didn't see them activate a single Fiendsmith card throughout the entire match. I'm just going to go ahead and assume it's pure Ryzeal, which is fair. It's a pretty popular variant of the deck. I'm not really sure why some people choose to play it pure over the Fiendsmith stuff. Seems like the Fiendsmith engine is just really, really good. But then again, I haven't really been paying too much attention to Ryzeal to know whether or not playing one engine is better than the other. But I just have, ever since I started playing, I always assume people are going to play Fiendsmith Ryzeal. But it's interesting to actually play against a pure variant of it. Now, going into Detonator with Cross is a very Herculean task with Speedroid because obviously we are a synchro-based deck. We cannot synchro if we do not have bodies on field, and we cannot use things like Tekatomborg and Car Turbo if we do not have bodies on field. So Detonator just ends up being the perfect counter in most cases to Speedroid and can just solo the engine on its own. Feels pretty bad, but you know, Speedroid does have some tricks up its sleeve, and as I mentioned in my last video, it can interact very, very well against the Ryzeal engine as the Ryzeal engine tries to go into the Speedroid end board, which we're going to get to take a look at here in game 2. So in game 2, as you could expect, I am of course going to go first. I have Wheel, Veiler, Crossout, Duplicate, and Hound. I'm going to start by activating Wheel, pitching the Duplicate out of my hand so I can normal summon Hound and send something else, right? Not that big of a deal. But my opponent Veilers the Hound, which is a very, very interesting Veiler. I go ahead and use the Duplicate to make Hound a level 2. Synchro off with the Dice to be able to bring back materials with Cork Shooter. Establish that early Crystal Wing like I've done many times before. And here I want to highlight something important. Here is me banishing that High Speedroid puzzle off of the Rubber Band Shooter to reveal both Marble Machine and the Colonel Clackers to guarantee one of those cards to my hand. I got best case scenario by getting Marble Machine to my hand, which is really nice because it gives me an extra body to work with. Not necessary. The most important thing, of course, is getting Colonel Clackers, and it's basically guaranteed to get, so there is no 50-50 here we're getting clackers regardless. So additional normal for Marble Machine, grab Chrono Clackers, activate Clackers, Banishing Wheel, and putting in that Wing Synchron into the EMZ, not EMZ, Pendulum Zone rather. And my opponent is going to go ahead and use that Druid Swarm there early. I assume they're doing that before I bring out the Clearwing Fast Dragon. Although I could have technically negated it with the Crystal Wing, but then that could leave me vulnerable to Nibiru. So I just let it fly. Going for Glider here, and Glider is going to go ahead and bring back Hagoita. Why not? So I can bring it back with its Graveyard effect. Going to OSD, going to Clearing Fast Dragon, and right now I feel very, very, confident in my board to be able to beat the Ryzeal deck with everything that we have. We have Hagoita on field, we have Glider in grave, we have Crystal Wing, we have OSD, we have Fast Dragon, we have Crossout, we have Veiler. We are stacked. My opponent is going to start with Ultimate Slay, dumping Chaos Angel, bouncing back the OSD, going to summon Baldrake here, Bonfire for Ice Riz. And now I think this is where they link into SP Little Knight, and they're going to try to chain block here. They're going to go Chainlink 1, Druid Swarm Chainlink 2. Or no, I don't. Yeah, they can't do the effect on summon because they didn't use an extra deck monster, right? It's been a little while. So they're going to go Druid Swarm Chainlink 1. I go Crystal Wing Chainlink 2. They go effect of SP as Chainlink 3, and then we go Chainlink 4 Fast Dragon to negate. So Fast Dragon and Crystal Wing combined going to handle that interaction nicely. They're going to put 2 level 4s on field, Alvela, Ice Ryzeal, and then Hagoita, tribute off to make everything level 5, and that is a wrap right there. Handled very, very easily. And at this point, we're pretty much in the driver's seat to take the game, and my opponent admits defeat. So let's take a look at the all-important Game 3. Now, as you would expect in Game 3, my opponent does decide to go first, and unfortunately for me, I open up all engine and 1 hand trap, and I decide to lead with Imperm on X Ryzeal, which I feel like is a pretty solid Imperm. I have a few friends that played Ryzeal that have told me that if they start with X Ryzeal, Imperming it is not a bad thing to do. But at the end of the day, my opponent does have plenty of extenders, and they are going to establish Detonator, they're going to establish Cross, and I believe they make Light Dragon at Ignister on top of set 1. And yeah, 4 engine with the Ash as a 6 card, best 6 card you could ask for, of course. I'm kind of cooked here. You saw how playing into Detonator Game 1 worked. They have Solemn Strike for Tekatomborg, which is insane. And then they have Bell for Colonel Clackers, of all things. Was not expecting that. So yeah, we got absolutely cooked there. But I wanted to show this match, importantly, just so you guys could see how well the Speedroid deck is capable of putting up a board that the Ryzeal engine just has a very, very hard time dealing with. Even through all the Bystials and SP Little Knight, right? We have Clearwing Synchro Dragon, we have Fast Dragon, we have tons of level manipulation. The Speedroid deck really can hang with the Ryzeal deck so long as Speedroid can go first. Now, going back to the main deck, I really quickly want to talk about the changes that I made from the last build that I showed you in my previous video. The first change, obviously, is I've swapped out the Perulias for Fuas, and the reason I did that is because this is a simulator, obviously, so don't have to pay for the Fuas. IRL, it would be Perulias, especially with that reprint coming up, but if you do have Fuas, I would highly recommend run the Fuas. Not only is the card just better, but it's a wind monster, which is so incredibly important for this deck. You can normal it and combo off with something like Tekatomborg or Car Turbo, and that makes a huge difference at the end of the day. Helps kind of solve some of those consistency issues. And the main changes I made was obviously dropping Tetherwolf and cutting 1 copy of Small World to fit in the Hound and the Duplicate. Now, why did I put Hound back in after gassing up Tetherwolf so much in my last video? Mainly because it's just less awkward to combo with Hound, being that it is a Speedroid monster, and you can basically use something like Dice on it, and it's much easier to synchro with. Sometimes when Tetherwolf becomes a level 7, your options to synchro with it are severely limited unless you have Red-Eyed Dice, and that's only if you have Kite Drake in your deck. And Tetherwolf is really only good for being a one-card rubber band shooter. It lacks utility in so many other categories, hence why I decided to take that slight hit to consistency just to add back a bit more utility and a bit more of a ceiling in the deck. And if it were the cash build, you would obviously have that synergy of Tetherwolf being a level 7 to combo with those cash cards to go into things like Dracossack. Obviously, we don't have that anymore, so I realized that, and I was like, you know what? Hound should probably be back in the deck. Even if it's at the cost of playing Duplicate, probably not that big of a deal as I was making it in the first place. And I realized I probably don't need to min-max as hard as I was with consistency, because at the end of the day, Speedroid being a sort of lower tier deck, those slight changes probably aren't going to make a big enough difference at the end of the day. So might as well make things a little bit more streamlined. And I think Hound does that. Not to mention, Hound is also a great card for Rubber Band Shooter to grab. That was another thing that I was missing, is if you're not playing Hound, your best options sometimes to reveal off of Rubber Band Shooter are Terror Top, our Marble Machine, our Double Yo-Yo. But there are sometimes I've noticed, if I've comboed already and used up some of those names, having Hound in the deck as an extra name to be able to grab was a lifesaver, and I didn't realize how much I was missing that until I put Hound back in the deck. So that's the other thing. And of course the follow-up, hence why I'm playing a second Cork Shooter, is because of Hound. I want that name to potentially be able to summon off of Hound's graveyard effect. Duplicate is in here obviously because I have to play it with Hound. Hound is not a one-card Rubber Band Shooter without it. And it's also just a great form of interruption on its own. So yeah. And then the other card was obviously dropping Small World 2/1. I felt like that was the easiest card to cut. I also just like the idea of playing one Small World to begin with. Having multiples in hand is terrible. Drawing another copy later on isn't that great either, just because how much resources you've probably already burned through at that point. And I think one is just a perfect fit all around. Now moving into the extra deck, obviously the only change I made was putting in the second Cork Shooter, and that's obviously because of the addition of Hound, and I dropped the High Speed Rider. Now, I'm not really sure why I gave High Speed Rider a chance. I think if I was playing Kite Drake and High Speed Rider in the extra deck, it would have made a little bit more sense, but it's just a little too awkward to summon. I don't have anything against people that want to play Clearwing Rider. Just personally for me, I just don't think it belongs in the extra deck. That's really about it. Yeah. And I'm perfectly fine with siding Kite Drake, just because it's really only good going second. There is no application for Kite Drake in terms of the Rubber Band Shooter. You're never really going to need to banish an 8 in this deck anymore, since we're not playing Rubber Band Plane. So I think it's perfectly fine to put in the side deck. I usually side out the second OSD because I'll probably never make a second OSD going second. You could also side out a Cork Shooter, or you could side out a Rubber Band Shooter. That's just typically what I side out. The other card I was thinking about playing in the extra deck is Raptite. It's a very sort of low-hanging fruit type card, very easy to make, and interacts very, very well against the Fiendsmith engine, but I could not bring myself to cut Juju. That removal is just so strong. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are the only differences, and I hope they made sense. I would continue to play this deck this way going forward. I did quite a bit of testing with this deck, and it's been a lot of fun actually, especially since I used the Mermail deck to sort of boost this account up to a higher rating, and I was able to play this deck at that higher rating. It was definitely an eye-opener, and the deck performed pretty well against a lot of things to my surprise. Didn't play against any Malice, thankfully. I mean, we all know how that would have gone, but there it is, the updated list. Hope you guys enjoyed this little follow-up video. If you did, please be sure to leave a like. If you guys want to see more replay videos like this, please feel free to let me know down in the comments. I would definitely love to hear you guys' feedback on what types of videos in general you want to see from me going forward. I'm very open to a lot of ideas and possibilities as it stands, so feel free again to drop those comments down below. And thank you so much for watching. As always, Winner Kills signing out. I'll see you guys in the next one. And of course, I owe a big thank you to all of our channel members, especially our divine level channel members, who are Professor Oo, Cadillacs, Pony Stark, Jose, Sepulveda, Mizfid, and HH Cyber. Thank you guys so much for the support.